Okay. Hi, everyone. It is Wednesday evening in sunny Palm Springs. For those of you who are not in the area, I heard that it reached 121 today in Palm Springs. Hot. So, here I am with my assistant, and we're going to, hi Eli, he's going to steal the show, and so I wanted to talk about the experience of looking at art, but I have to start, as I always do, with, it's becoming a sacrament, by libation. That's not for you, Eli. All right. So it's 5 o'clock. Cheers. So this topic is going to be one I think that's going to be difficult to articulate, but that's one of the reasons why I want to do it, because I want to take a shot at this. Last week, or last month, I talked about artists making meaning, or putting meaning in their art, creating art that has a specific meaning. And there's pressure on artists to do that. But what if we don't know what the artist's intention is? And also, do we actually need to know what the artist's intention is in order to have our own experience of the art? I don't think that there is a correct way to do this. So, so that's some of the thoughts that I want to get to today in this talk. And Eli, you want to come over and sit with me instead of bugging our cameraman? Okay. Our sweet Eli. So, part of how I came to this first was that what I said about the talk from last month, but also, as I mentioned last month, we just lost a dear friend, and I'm reminded of a long, long time ago when I was also dealing with a big grief, and I went to a priest. At that time, I was attending services at a well-heeled monastery in well-heeled part, rural, semi-rural Connecticut. And the priest was an artist, he was a painter. And I went to him and I said, what do I do with these feelings? How do I manage this? And his answer was very quickly, go to the arts. What he said to me was, the arts are so beautiful that they're devastating. And what I think he meant, or what I took it to mean, is that they could help me kind of break down and have a catharsis. So I took his advice, and even though I was already looking at and enjoying art a lot, it did help me go a little deeper. Most of these cathartic moments happened around music or theater, performance arts, but sometimes it happens with paintings, and it gave me a better sense of a spiritual experience of looking at art. Now, that didn't start for me at that point. I did grow up Catholic, where art was a big part of our churches. So we were taught about reverence of beautiful art and the stories that they were telling. So what I'd like to ask you tonight, if you're listening, click on something, click on like so I can find out you're here. But also, in addition to that, if you have any thoughts about how you experience art, what your experience of it is, put them in the comments if you're willing, and I will see them after the talk is over, and I promise I'll respond. Stu is not going to be able to do that because he's holding.
I can't wave.
He wants to wave to people and he can't do it. I could wave. I don't know who I'm waving to. So anyway, what I'm going to do is start to go through some of this as well. So let me start over here with something that I obviously have talked about all of these books before, but something that I've talked about before. So this is an artist who is Ai Weiwei, Chinese dissident artist, and he did this great exhibit in 2015 on Alcatraz and at Alcatraz, and it was really moving. It was moving because of where it was and because of his particular circumstance. So he took the spaces and used them as part of his art. So in this example here, he is showing us well, Chinese dragons, but put in a way here that they look like they're trying to get out, they're trying to escape. And these are the kinds of messages that he was bringing. For me, when I was there and looking at it, the colors were beautiful and they were great, juxtaposed against the concrete and the interior of this once a prison building. So that was one thing that he did in regard to the building. The other was he did displays that were audio displays in a row of cells here. So in each one there were recordings and writings by people who had been prisoner in those particular cells at some point in time. Or people, I take that back. These were people who had been political prisoners and some of their messages. These were not necessarily there where they were incarcerated. So here's meaning in art. It was really clear what he wanted me to think about, so I thought about it, of course. But some of the other experiences, and I have to be careful that I intellectualize some of this because of how long I've worked with various arts. But there still is something else that happens for me. So I have to bring up Jackson Pollock because this kind of abstract expressionism was early inspiration for me. I was awed by it. I find pieces like this one to be really intriguing. There are some recognizable forms, but the colors and the shapes and the lines and the way they sway really touches me in a way that I can't usually articulate. And I think that abstract expressionism does not necessarily need articulation. I think they're very personal reactions. And I think that we are allowed to project onto these things. There are some objective things. This is another one of his paintings. There are some objective things. There was a wonderful docent from LA who came to the Palm Springs Art Museum to give us some training. She was from MoCA in LA, and she said, you know, there is no bunny rabbit in the Pollock. So I have to agree with her. So there's that objective reality. But otherwise, I think we can project onto our feelings onto this, as well as try to see what was he feeling. These were action paintings, so which we now know, and it was his intention to show, to bring that action. So the energy that he used in creating these works is part of the message and part of how you can experience it. It feels chaotic. Well, maybe he felt chaotic when he was doing it. Or does it touch something chaotic in you, which brings me back to the priest who told me to go to the arts. So which, by the way, I think was one of the best bits of life advice I ever got there. So some of the projecting, it is, and when I studied art therapy, we talked about this. We project all over the place, and it was very careful. We had to learn how to be really careful not to project our own ideas onto the work of a client and assume that we know what they mean, which is what we do. So, which I think is very common. So, so we do project, but we have to be careful about how we do this. We want to be careful not to get too far off into these ideas, so much so that we are certain we know something that we haven't been told. Because we might be wrong. And I don't, and again, I don't know if it matters whether we're completely right if we're talking about having our own personal experience of the art. One of the things, so I'll bring this up first. I brought this book from the exhibit Kinesthesia, and when I was giving tours of this exhibit at the Palm Springs Art Museum, I was struck by how, after being a big fan of the abstract expressionists telling us how they felt, I was struck by the artists who were giving us an experience to have. Kinetic art, which is moving or looks like it's moving, gives us an experience. And so I picked out a couple that I liked. This one, which I know I showed once a couple of months ago, was 3 rooms, each one in a different color. And it's very cool to be awash in color. I think we don't realize how much we can be affected by that. And so this was kinesthetic because we moved through the rooms. And one room, as you can see in here, there was a blue room and a red room, and there's a little pink that's in this here. Well, that's the colors mixing. So there was a lot of that. So it was a very interesting experience. These are 2 layers. The top layer is a plexi with stripes and images on them, and there's a layer behind it which is not clear, but also has stripes on it. So there's one juxtaposed over the other. And in a case like this, when you walk past it, there's movement. This was the first thing you saw when you entered the exhibit. If you look at these, they look like vertical blinds. They were like vertical blinds. And the way the light was projected and the way this this square, this diamond, or whatever you'd call that, was placed, you could walk between them. And people would take their pictures. It was perfect for that. And it was also an immersion sort of thing. So you're experiencing the art. So what are you experiencing? I think it's you suspend some of your day-to-day concerns when you're having that kind of experience. You're not thinking about, you're not thinking about where you're going to park your car, or if you're going to get a ticket if you're parked in the wrong place. You are disoriented, so you have to be, and that's the rooms of color were disorienting, and so that made you stop and think. So it's kind of, it's a little meditative. These are the same things. What you can't see here is that these colors and lights moved in these light boxes. And so, and it was one room, and they took turns moving. So that was kind of interesting. So here, the point I'm making is that this is a group of artists, Latin American kinetic art, where the artists were asking us to have an experience, providing a situation where we can have an experience. But for most of the art that we look at, we have to kind of engage with it on our own. So, and I'll make this contrast here. I brought Picasso because I think we should bring Picasso for anything like this. But I have to admit that my reactions to Picasso, who I think was a brilliant artist, are mostly academic and intellectual. I know a lot about what he was doing, I guess. I know that he was inspired for this kind of work by African masks, and so I see that. If I didn't know that, I might see it anyway. I'll come back to that. I love that statement. Or did I not save anything else? There is, I know there's other stuff in here because I was looking at it. I'm intrigued. I have a different kind of experience. I'll read this. Art should not be trompe l'oeil. It should be trompe l'esprit. Aha. I think he's right about that. What I wanted to find, I thought I had saved. He did drawings, when he did realistic drawings of people, the hands and the feet were often stubby and fat. I take that back, they were always stubby and fat. And, but they were more realistic than this. So perhaps it's in a different part of the book. If I can find it, then I will. Can't find it. Okay. You'll have to take my word for it. I think these are fascinating, but that's where I also get a little more academic because these are geometric. He's playing with perspective. He's playing mostly with perspective. He's not playing with scale. He's keeping his scale pretty realistic, but he is looking at different angles of each thing all at the same time. So he includes all of them. And so that sounds kind of academic to me. I like them though, they're really wonderful. And I was going to talk about, let me go to my boy Kandinsky, because there is something I want to talk about here in terms of experience. Because I have a unique experience when I look at Kandinsky's work. That's more of the later work, like this kind of work. This is yellow, wrong glasses, yellow, red, blue is what and you can tell that. There's lots of movement, there's a lot here. Kandinsky was dealing with something that's called synesthesia. So synesthesia is, it's not a condition, but it's a mixing up of the senses. We are looking at art, not dogs. Although he's a beautiful dog. So, with Kandinsky it was music and color, and they intermingled with him. Certain colors could help him hear certain notes. I don't think he audibly heard them. I think he heard them in his mind, and I say that because I have that experience myself. If sometimes it's because of the scale of something. If one of these works is on display, one of these larger works of his on display, and I'm standing, like this one is one of my favorites, and I'm standing in front of a large piece like this, I can sort of feel the music. I'm obviously not feeling, I don't know that. I don't know if I'm feeling the same music he did, but this one is a composition. So he did compositions and improvisations, and he meant those as musical terms. And so, so that does happen to me. If I'm in front of a large canvas and there are certain colors and certain angles, a lot of it is angles and shapes for me. If I'm there in front of something like that, I do get this sense of awe that rises up in me. And sometimes I can get a sense of something musical with it. It's very vague. I think that's a cool one too. So I think that that's something that he was playing with that I think was fairly important, because I think if the priest was, Father John was telling me the truth, as I'm sure it was his truth, music and painting and, you know, theatrical performances and all of that can draw us into a different mindset. And so that's our experience of the art. So if an artist is putting meaning of some sort into their work, then, you know, but you don't know what that meaning is, you can still have an experience. Which brings me to this. Also at the Palm Springs Art Museum, there was an exhibit of 5 Southern California artists, all women. They called it Brave New Worlds Explorations of Space. And the reason I agreed to join the specialists group was because it was very challenging work, and a lot of people went into this and couldn't figure out what it was and decided they didn't like it. Some of the work, I guess I would say I liked. Some of it I did not like. That didn't matter. Because what I'm talking about, what I'm thinking about, when I go to look at art, it's not about whether I like it or not. I very rarely say I don't like something. You know, I never met a color I didn't like. But I do think that everything is, you know, has its reaction. So in particular, there was one artist who, I'm sure I saved it, who had a shamanic background in using shamanism in her own life experience. And her art was about shamanism. Indirectly, I suppose, but not so indirectly. So it was stuff like this. So these, what looked like pipes, had a meaning which you could learn by reading the wall text. But for some reason, since I have studied some shamanism and done a lot of reading on it, I was able to relate to it somehow. So when I learned that she was working with shamanism as part of her medium, it made perfect sense to me. Most people didn't really relate to what she was doing. Yeah, that's funny, I thought I saved it. Most people didn't think that most people didn't like it. Most people would say to me, oh my God, how do you talk about this? Well, I could talk about it because she had taken humongous lily pad leaves from the Amazon in South America, which still had, and did impressions of them, and the impressions still had blood on them, and used that as part of the art. They were, sculptures created from the actual leaves, impressions of those leaves. And I thought they were really fascinating, but most people are like, what's that? So, okay, but that's why I wanted to be a part of that exhibit, because I wanted to be able to challenge myself and to challenge people to find a different way to look at the art and to have an experience independent of what was on the wall text perhaps, or maybe informed by what was on the wall text, one or the other. And so I don't know if I just spoke in circles in all of that, except to say that I think that I think that viewing art is, of course, extremely personal, and we project on it a lot, and project ourselves, but it's not about whether you like it or not. It's about, can you relate to it? So if I were to have someone look at this long piece here, I don't know if you can get that all in one shot, but this long piece here, how might you relate to that? Because I've taken some yarn and some canvas and pieces of wood and paper and added it to this. I'm not drawing a picture. So how do you relate to that? And I don't have an answer to that. As the artist, I'm working in a space that's maybe semi-conscious or unconscious. That hopefully I'm drawing colors and shapes out of my unconscious to put on a surface. So, put on the surface for people to look at and to see, and perhaps they can appreciate the juxtapositions of the colors and the way the colors work together, and the way the shapes work together to reflect one another. So I think with that, I would like to thank you for indulging me in my roundabout talk, and thank you for listening. And if you are in the area and you're willing to brave the heat, I'll be here for a while, and I hope to see you. And if not, I hope to see you soon. Be well. Thank you.